Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, lying completely still, staring at the ceiling while a strange chill slowly crawled down your spine? A feeling so difficult to explain, almost as if you were trapped inside a bad movie that keeps replaying the same painful story over and over again. Only the actors keep changing. The plot feels terrifyingly familiar. Maybe you just walked away from a brutal breakup. You were emotionally exhausted after escaping a narcissistic partner, someone manipulative enough to make you slowly lose touch with who you were. You cut off all contact. You read healing books. You promised yourself there would never be a second time. Then time passed. Slowly, you began opening your heart again. And eventually, someone new entered your life. This person seemed calm, gentle, completely different from the last one. But only a few months later, the mask began to fall away. There were no loud manipulation games this time, no explosive drama, but instead there was a colder form of emotional neglect, subtle, quiet, almost invisible, yet somehow just as painful. You thought you had escaped the nightmare, but in reality you had only stepped into another version of the same nightmare. And it wasn't only happening in love. You tried escaping in another direction too, your career. You quit your job. You carried a cardboard box full of personal belongings out of the old office, leaving behind a toxic boss who drained your effort while taking credit for everything you created. You thought this was your fresh start. A new office, a modern building, espresso machines humming quietly in the background, professional people, a promising atmosphere. But within the first week, you realized something disturbing. Sitting beside you was a coworker who smiled kindly to your face while quietly sabotaging you behind your back, almost identical to the person you thought you had escaped. And in that moment, something inside you turned cold. The loop had closed again. You found yourself standing at a crossroads in life, closing your eyes, lifting your face toward the sky, carrying only one bitter question inside your chest. Why? Why do I always attract people like this? Why does every new person eventually bring the same kind of pain into my life? Slowly, you began believing you carried some invisible curse, some strange bad luck woven into your existence like a magnetic field that specialized in attracting toxic people. And without realizing it, you started seeing yourself as a victim, someone being mocked by the universe itself. But pause for a moment. Stop the tragic soundtrack playing inside your mind and prepare yourself for a truth that may send another chill through your body. The reason you keep running into the same storm is not because you are unlucky. It is not because the universe is punishing you. And it is not because you were born to suffer at the hands of terrible people. The truth is much stranger than that. Those narcissists, emotionally unavailable lovers, manipulative bosses, fake coworkers, none of them appeared randomly. They were summoned. And the thing summoning them was your own consciousness. Imagine your life as a massive movie theater, an incredibly realistic three-dimensional theater. But here's the twist. The light is not coming from the screen. The light is coming from inside you. Through the lens of consciousness, that inner light projects outward onto the giant screen called reality. And on that screen appear countless characters, lovers, friends, co-workers, bosses. Meanwhile, you sit in the audience crying, raging, blaming, completely forgetting one crucial thing. The film that is playing is your film. If deep inside you fear abandonment, life will send someone emotionally unavailable to confirm that fear. If somewhere inside you believe you are not enough, a manipulative boss will arrive and treat you in the exact same way you secretly treat yourself. Those toxic people are not random enemies. They are actors. Actors hired to play roles already written into the unconscious script within you. Their faces may change. Their names may change. Their circumstances may change. But the role remains identical because they are reflecting the exact wounds, unhealed fractures, and bleeding shadows still living inside your own psyche. And right now, a part of your mind is probably resisting this idea violently. Your logic may already be screaming, "That's impossible. How can real human beings simply be reflections of me?" They argue with you. They betray you. They hurt you. Their words make your chest tighten. Their actions leave scars. When your bank account empties, those numbers are painfully real. So how could all of this possibly be some projection of the mind? To expose this strange matrix, ordinary psychological advice is no longer enough. We cannot explain matter using emotion alone. If we truly want to understand why the same faces keep appearing in our lives, We must go further, much further, so far that we must borrow the cold but razor-sharp lens of the greatest physicists in human history. So for a moment, leave the emotional stories behind and step into a colder territory, physics. Not the dry physics from school textbooks, but the kind of ideas that shook the scientific world itself. Decades ago, an extraordinary theoretical physicist named David Bohm, a man who worked closely with Albert Einstein, introduced a concept so radical that it stunned the scientific community. He called it the implicate order. According to Bohm, the three-dimensional physical world we live in, the table you touch, your physical body, the people around you, all of it may only be the surface layer of reality. He called this visible layer the explicate order. But behind it exists something deeper, an invisible ocean, a deeper field of existence where nothing is truly separate from anything else. At that deeper level, the fundamental particles of the universe do not exist as isolated objects. They are not tiny marbles floating through empty space. They are part of a unified field, a single interconnected structure binding everything together. Which means the separation you believe you see in this world, person from person, object from object, me from you, may only be an illusion created at the surface level of reality. But the story becomes even stranger from here. For many years, Bohm's idea remained only a bold theory until other brilliant minds entered the conversation. Physicists like Leonard Susskind, one of the fathers of string theory, and Gerard T. Hooft began trying to solve a paradox that haunted modern physics for decades, a paradox made famous by Stephen Hawking involving black holes. If an object falls into a black hole, does its information disappear forever, or does it somehow survive? Quantum mechanics insists information can never truly be destroyed, yet black holes seem to erase it completely. And in attempting to solve this contradiction, physicists arrived at one of the most shocking conclusions in modern science, a principle so strange that even today it sounds like science fiction. And what those physicists discovered sounded almost impossible to believe. They proposed that our entire universe may operate like a hologram. Not metaphorically, literally. A three-dimensional reality projected from a deeper informational layer, existing somewhere beyond what the eyes can perceive. This became known as the holographic principle. To understand how strange this idea truly is, imagine the information on a bank card. That tiny strip contains enough encoded data to access an entire financial identity. Or think about a video game disc. The disc itself is thin and flat, yet hidden inside it is an entire three-dimensional world filled with landscapes, characters, weather systems, movement, sound, emotion, and stories. In the same way, these physicists suggested that the universe we experience as solid and physical may actually be a projection emerging from a deeper informational field. What you call matter could simply be compressed information appearing real because consciousness experiences it through space and time. But the most disturbing part of the hologram theory is not the idea that reality itself may be projected. The truly unsettling part is how holograms behave. Imagine taking a normal photograph of a horse and cutting it into pieces. Each fragment would only contain one small section of the image. But holograms do not work that way. If you shatter a holographic image of a rose into many pieces, each tiny fragment still contains the entire rose. Smaller, blurrier perhaps, but still complete. Every fragment contains information about the whole. Let that sink in for a moment. If reality itself functions holographically, then you are not a disconnected fragment floating alone in the universe. You are a living fragment carrying the informational pattern of the entire system inside you, which means every possibility, every shadow, every emotional wound, every form of love, every form of fear, every human face you meet may already exist as data within your own consciousness. And now we arrive at the point where everything becomes deeply personal. The toxic lover, the manipulative boss, the fake friend, the emotionally unavailable partner, the coworker who secretly envies you, the narcissist who drains your spirit. What if none of them are truly separate from you in the way you think? What if the distance between you and them is only part of the illusion created by the three-dimensional projection itself? Because if the holographic model holds even a grain of truth, then the information generating those people also exists somewhere within you. Your awareness acts almost like a laser passing through the unique holographic film called you, projecting specific patterns outward into the theater of reality. And the projection that returns to you takes shape as people, situations, betrayals, relationships, emotional dynamics, and repeating stories. Which means if the internal pattern does not change, the external projection cannot truly change either. This is why people often believe they escaped a toxic relationship, only to find themselves trapped in another version of the same emotional prison months later. Different face, same wound. Different city, same pain. Different office, same emotional pattern. Because no one escapes their own internal code simply by changing scenery. The holographic script continues running until consciousness becomes aware of the script itself. And maybe this is why certain people trigger such disproportionate emotional reactions inside you. Because they are not merely random individuals crossing your path. They are activating information already living within your nervous system. But at this point, we must leave physics for a moment and enter another territory, one just as deep, the human psyche. Decades before modern consciousness culture turned psychology into internet quotes and motivational slogans. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung spent years exploring the hidden architecture of the unconscious mind. And what Jung discovered mirrors the holographic principle in a disturbingly intimate way. According to Jung, every human being is born carrying a vast range of potential traits. Compassion, kindness, love, creativity, but also envy, rage, manipulation, cruelty, selfishness, hunger for control, fear, darkness. Yet as children grow up, society slowly teaches them which parts are acceptable and which parts must be hidden in order to receive love, approval, and belonging. So the mind begins splitting itself. The qualities considered good become part of the conscious identity, while the rejected parts are buried deep inside the unconscious. Jung called this hidden territory the shadow. The shadow is not only evil. It is everything about yourself you refuse to fully see. The jealousy you deny. The insecurity you suppress. The need for validation you pretend does not exist. The anger you swallow. The selfishness you hide beneath politeness. The parts of yourself you exile into darkness do not disappear. They remain alive beneath awareness, waiting to be acknowledged. And the more intensely you reject them, the stronger they become in the unconscious. But here is where the mechanism becomes terrifyingly subtle. The ego does not want to admit, I can be manipulative too. I can abandon people too. I can crave power too. I can wound others too. So instead of recognizing those traits internally, the psyche projects them outward onto other people. Suddenly, the selfishness you cannot accept inside yourself becomes unbearable when you see it in someone else. The arrogance you secretly repress becomes infuriating when another person displays confidence openly. The emotional coldness you carry toward yourself appears outside you in the form of unavailable partners. In other words, the people who trigger the strongest emotional reactions inside you are often carrying reflections of the exact parts of yourself your consciousness has not yet integrated. And this is where the illusion begins to crack. Because maybe those repeating toxic faces are not appearing in your life to destroy you. Maybe they are appearing to reveal the parts of yourself you have spent your entire life trying not to see. And this is where the illusion becomes almost unbearable to look at. Because the people you hate most intensely may not be appearing in your life to torture you, but to expose the exact parts of yourself you buried so deeply that you no longer remember they exist. Carl Jung once wrote that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again slowly. The unconscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Suddenly, the mysterious pattern starts making sense. The same toxic relationships, the same betrayals, the same emotional pain repeating under different names and different faces. It feels like destiny because the unconscious keeps projecting the same unresolved material outward again and again. But this idea did not appear only in modern psychology. Thousands of years before Jung, ancient spiritual traditions were already whispering the same truth in a different language. In the Upanishads of ancient India, there is a sacred phrase known as Tat Tvam Asi. It means, you are that. At first, those words sound poetic, almost mystical, but their meaning is devastatingly profound. The thing you see outside yourself is not truly separate from you. The observer and the observed are deeply entangled within the same field of existence. The one hurting and the one being hurt may belong to the same deeper consciousness expressing itself through different forms. Imagine your right hand accidentally cutting your left hand with a knife. The left hand screams in pain and demands punishment, but would it make sense for the body to declare war against itself? In the same way, perhaps human beings are fragments of one deeper consciousness temporarily forgetting their connection and attacking reflections of themselves in different forms. Suddenly, quantum ideas, holographic reality, Jungian psychology, and ancient spiritual wisdom begin pointing toward the same terrifying possibility. Other people may not simply be other people. They may be mirrors, living mirrors reflecting the hidden film running silently inside your own mind. And if that is true, then everything changes. Because the entire way most human beings try to solve suffering is completely backward. Imagine sitting inside a movie theater watching a terrifying horror film. Blood, monsters, betrayal, darkness everywhere. The movie becomes so emotionally overwhelming that you leap from your seat and begin attacking the screen itself. You throw chairs. You scratch the projection. You scream at the actors. But no matter how violently you attack the screen, the movie continues playing. Why? Because the screen is not the source. The source is hidden behind you, inside the projector room. And this is exactly how most people live their entire lives. They spend years trying to destroy the reflections appearing on the screen of reality instead of looking at the unconscious film inside themselves generating the projection. They change partners, change cities, change careers, change social circles, change environments. But the emotional pattern remains untouched, so reality simply casts new actors into the same unconscious script. The names change, the costumes change, the scenery changes, but the suffering feels strangely familiar because the projection mechanism itself never changed. This is why people often say, "Why does this keep happening to me?" The deeper question is not why it keeps happening. The deeper question is what inside you keeps recreating it. Imagine standing in front of a mirror with dirt smeared across your face, but instead of washing your face, you spend hours desperately scrubbing the mirror. You become exhausted, frustrated, angry. You may even shatter the mirror completely. But no matter how many mirrors you destroy, the stain remains because it was never on the mirror to begin with. It was always on the face being reflected. In the same way, many people spend years trying to fix lovers, bosses, friends, co-workers, believing those external figures are the true cause of their suffering. They attack the reflection instead of healing the wound beneath it. They leave relationships, convinced the other person was the problem, only to encounter another version of the same pain later. They quit jobs believing the environment was toxic, only to discover the same emotional dynamics reappearing somewhere else. Because the unconscious projection follows them wherever they go. The holographic film travels with the projector. And perhaps this is the most painful realization of all. The people hurting you are not necessarily appearing because the universe hates you. They may be appearing because some unseen part of your consciousness desperately wants to be seen, acknowledged, healed, and finally brought back into wholeness. The emotionally unavailable partner may be reflecting the ways you abandoned yourself long before they arrived. The controlling boss may be mirroring the harsh inner voice constantly controlling your own thoughts. The arrogant coworker may be exposing the confidence you secretly buried because you were taught not to shine too brightly. Every trigger becomes a doorway. Every emotional reaction becomes information. Every painful relationship becomes a coded message from the unconscious mind. And perhaps the tragedy of human life is not that people suffer, but that most people spend their entire lives attacking the mirrors without ever realizing the projector was inside them all along. And this is where the entire illusion begins collapsing in on itself. Because if reality truly behaves like a mirror, then most people have been fighting reflections their entire lives without ever touching the real source of their suffering. Imagine sitting inside a dark movie theater watching a terrifying film unfold across the screen. Betrayal, abandonment, manipulation, emotional pain so intense that your entire body tightens while watching it. Then suddenly, overwhelmed by fear and rage, you jump from your seat and begin attacking the screen itself. You scream at the actors. You throw objects at the projection. You claw at the images with your bare hands. But no matter how violently you fight the screen, the movie keeps playing exactly the same way. Because the screen is not creating the movie, the real source sits hidden behind you in the projector room. And this is precisely what human beings keep doing in their relationships, careers, friendships, and emotional lives. They attack the projection while ignoring the unconscious film generating it. They leave one relationship only to recreate the same emotional prison with someone else. They move to another city hoping to escape old pain, only to discover familiar suffering waiting for them there. They change jobs, environments, even identities, but somehow the emotional pattern always returns wearing a different face. Because the projection follows the projector, the unconscious script keeps broadcasting itself outward until it is finally seen. Most people believe they are trying to change their lives, but in reality they are often just changing the scenery around an unchanged internal film. The names change, the bodies change, the details change, but the emotional atmosphere remains eerily familiar. And maybe this is why so many people feel exhausted by life itself. Not because reality is attacking them randomly, but because they are unconsciously replaying the same unresolved frequencies through different human mirrors over and over again. Imagine standing in front of a mirror one morning and noticing a dark stain across your face. Panic rises immediately. You grab a towel and begin scrubbing the mirror furiously. Harder and harder. Minutes pass. The stain remains. Frustration turns into rage. Eventually, you smash the mirror completely. Glass explodes across the floor. But when you look up again, the stain is still there. Why? Because the stain was never on the mirror. It was on your face all along. In exactly the same way, human beings spend years trying to fix, control, punish, or escape the people reflecting their wounds instead of healing the wound itself. They believe the toxic partner is the source. The manipulative boss is the source. The emotionally unavailable lover is the source. The arrogant coworker is the source. But what if those people are only mirrors reflecting unconscious patterns that already exist within the nervous system and psyche? What if every painful interaction is actually revealing something hidden inside you that still longs to be acknowledged? This is why simply removing people from your life often does not truly end the cycle. You can break up, move away, block the number, quit the job, burn every bridge behind you. But if the internal film remains untouched, reality quietly recruits new actors to continue the same story. The universe does not need the same faces to repeat the same emotional lesson. It only needs the same unresolved pattern. And this is where the truth becomes both painful and liberating at the same time. Because if your unconscious mind helped create the projection, then you are not powerless. It means you are no longer condemned to spend your entire life fighting shadows on the screen. You can finally turn around and enter the projector room itself. You can begin examining the film hidden behind the projection, the fear of abandonment, the hunger for validation, the belief that you are not enough, the inner voice that constantly criticizes you, the suppressed rage, the hidden shame, the parts of yourself you buried in order to survive emotionally. Suddenly, every trigger transforms into information. Every emotional reaction becomes a doorway into the unconscious. The partner who ignores you may reveal how deeply you ignore your own emotional needs. The controlling person may expose how harshly you control yourself internally. The arrogant person may reveal a buried desire to finally express your own power openly without guilt. And perhaps this is why the universe keeps sending mirrors until the lesson is finally understood. Not as punishment, not as cruelty, but as an invitation to become conscious. Because the moment you stop attacking the mirror and begin healing the face being reflected, something extraordinary starts happening. The projection begins changing on its own. If this message resonates with you right now, pause for a moment and type these words in the comments. I stop fighting the mirror. I return to myself. Not as motivation, not as affirmation theater, but as a declaration that you are finally willing to stop wasting your life battling reflections while ignoring the unconscious source beneath them. Because no one can truly change the movie by punching the screen. The film only changes when the projector itself changes. And perhaps this is the hidden key most people spend their entire lives searching for outside themselves. The world was never only happening to you. It was also revealing you to yourself. And if a person never understands this mechanism, life quietly becomes a prison made of mirrors. They spend years exhausting themselves trying to polish reflections instead of healing the face creating them. This is the hidden tragedy of what could be called the sentence of the mirror cleaner. Imagine someone standing before a dirty mirror every single day, convinced the stain exists on the glass itself. They scrub harder. They become more desperate, more aggressive. Eventually, they crack the mirror in frustration, believing destruction equals freedom. But no matter how many mirrors they break, the stain keeps returning because it was never outside them to begin with. And this is exactly how countless human beings move through relationships. In love, they try to force the other person to change through emotional pressure, arguments, silence, manipulation, guilt, jealousy, endless conversations that go nowhere. They believe if the other person would finally behave differently, then peace would arrive. In work environments, they spend years fighting toxic bosses, gossiping about coworkers, obsessing over unfair treatment, desperately trying to prove who is right and who is wrong. And sometimes the pressure becomes too much. The mirror finally shatters. A breakup happens. A divorce. Someone quits the job. A friendship collapses. And for a brief moment, the ego celebrates. Finally, I escaped the toxic person. Finally, I'm free. But weeks later, months later, sometimes even years later, the exact same emotional wound quietly returns wearing a new face. Because the projection source was never removed. The unconscious film remained untouched. The fear of abandonment remained. The fragile self-worth remained. The buried shame remained. The inner child starving for love remained. The person only destroyed the surface reflection while the internal code generating it continued broadcasting. Beneath awareness. And this is why life keeps repeating itself in strange cycles until consciousness finally understands the lesson hidden underneath the pain. After a painful breakup, many people experience temporary relief. They travel. They read healing books. They start journaling. They promise themselves they will never choose the wrong person again. Some even reinvent their identities entirely. But deep underneath the conscious mind, the old script is often still running silently. The same unconscious beliefs, the same emotional wounds, the same hidden fears, the same hunger for validation. It is almost like an invisible signal continuing to radiate outward into reality saying, "This wound still exists inside me. Please bring me another mirror to reveal it." And reality responds accordingly, not because the universe is cruel, but because the universe mirrors internal coherence with astonishing precision. The old actor leaves the stage, but the system quietly searches for a new actor capable of playing the exact same emotional role. And at first, the new person looks completely different. The new relationship feels safer. The new company feels healthier. The new friendship feels genuine. But eventually, the old emotional pattern begins surfacing again from beneath the surface, like something unfinished refusing to die. The emotionally unavailable partner appears again in another form. The manipulative dynamic returns through different words. The feeling of not being enough rises once more inside the chest. Because changing scenery never changes the projector. Running away from the mirror only guarantees meeting another one later. And perhaps this is why pain can become sacred if understood correctly. The people who trigger you most deeply may actually be carrying messages from the unconscious mind itself. They are not simply enemies appearing randomly in your path. They are mirrors exposing unresolved fragments still asking to be integrated. Which means every emotional reaction contains hidden information. Every trigger becomes a doorway. Every conflict becomes an invitation to wake up. But in order to use pain this way, something radical must happen first. You must stop reacting automatically. You must interrupt the unconscious loop before it completely possesses you. This is where inner alchemy begins. The ancient transformation of emotional pain into awareness. Imagine someone says something that instantly ignites anger inside your body. Your chest tightens. Your heart accelerates. Heat rises into your face. The nervous system prepares for attack. Normally, this is the moment most people explode outward unconsciously. But what if that emotional eruption is not actually a command to attack the other person? What if it is an alarm revealing a wound that was already there long before this moment? This is the beginning of what could be called the mirror protocol. A simple but life-changing practice built around 3 seconds of awareness. The first second, become silent. Do not react immediately. Do not send the message. Do not defend yourself yet. Simply feel the emotional storm moving through your body without projecting it outward. The second, look at the other person differently. Instead of seeing an enemy, imagine them as a living screen reflecting hidden material inside your own consciousness. Not because they are innocent saints, but because your emotional reaction contains information beyond the surface event itself. The second, turn the arrow of awareness inward and ask one terrifyingly honest question. What exactly inside me is being touched right now? What wound does this situation awaken? What part of myself have I been refusing to see? And this is the moment the victim identity begins collapsing. Because instead of automatically pointing outward, consciousness finally turns inward toward the original source. Suddenly, the emotionally unavailable partner may reveal how deeply you abandon yourself emotionally every single day. The manipulative person may expose the ways you manipulate yourself through fear and self-criticism. The arrogant coworker may uncover a hidden desire inside you that was buried long ago because you were taught not to shine too brightly. The mirror stops being an enemy. It becomes information. And the moment a person learns how to read the message hidden inside the trigger instead of blindly attacking the reflection, the entire structure of suffering begins changing from the inside out. And this is where the process becomes even deeper, because seeing the mirror is only the beginning. The real transformation begins when you stop feeding the projection with your emotional energy. Most people believe suffering continues because of what another person did to them. But very often, suffering continues because the mind keeps replaying the person internally long after the external event has ended. The relationship ends, yet the conversations continue inside the head. The betrayal is over, yet the nervous system keeps reliving it every night. The person leaves physically, but psychologically they are still occupying enormous space inside your consciousness. And every time you replay the memory, rehearse imaginary arguments, stalk their social media, retell the story to others, or mentally relive the emotional wound, you continue sending energy back into the projection itself. You keep powering the movie you claim you want to escape. This is why one of the most important steps in breaking unconscious loops is the retrieval of projected energy. The ego hates this step because the ego survives through blame. As long as someone else remains the villain, the ego can continue seeing itself as innocent, wounded, morally superior, or spiritually special. But the moment you stop feeding the emotional drama, something uncomfortable begins happening. All the energy that was flowing outward toward the mirror starts returning inward. And when it returns inward, the real pain finally surfaces. Not the pain of the other person, but the pain that existed long before they arrived. The abandoned child inside you. The fear of not being lovable. The hunger for validation. The terror of being unseen. The grief you buried years ago beneath distraction and survival. Suddenly the person who hurt you is no longer the center of the story. They become the doorway that revealed what was already living inside you. This is why true healing is not about obsessively analyzing another person's behavior forever. It is about reclaiming your consciousness from the projection. Imagine unplugging a machine that has been running nonstop for years. At first, the silence feels unbearable. The nervous system panics because it has become addicted to emotional stimulation. Many people secretly become chemically attached to their own suffering without realizing it. The emotional drama gives identity to the ego. It creates familiarity. It creates movement. It creates intensity. So when the projection begins losing power, the mind often tries desperately to restart the old cycle. It wants to check the phone again, reopen the wound again, recreate the argument again, return to the same emotional frequency again. But if you resist feeding the loop, something extraordinary slowly begins happening. The energy starts collapsing back into the body itself. The projection weakens. The mirror loses emotional charge. The person who once consumed your mind every hour of the day slowly becomes quieter inside you. Not because you forced forgiveness artificially, but because you finally stopped supplying emotional fuel to the unconscious pattern. And this is where another profound realization emerges. You begin understanding that many of the people who hurt you were not simply villains sent to destroy your life. They were mirrors carrying information about unconscious wounds asking to be healed. The emotionally unavailable partner reflected your abandonment of yourself. The manipulative person exposed the fear already controlling your inner world. The arrogant person activated the confidence you buried in your own shadow. Every painful relationship becomes a coded message once the projection is decoded correctly. But decoding the message is only one layer. The deeper layer is integration. Because the unconscious shadow does not disappear through hatred. It dissolves through awareness and acceptance. This is where you stop trying to amputate unwanted parts of yourself and begin learning how to embrace them consciously. Instead of saying, "I should never feel insecure," you begin saying, "I see the insecure part inside me, and I no longer need to exile it." Instead of pretending to be endlessly strong, spiritually evolved, or emotionally perfect, you begin allowing yourself to become human again. You acknowledge the jealous part, the frightened part, the lonely part, the needy part, the wounded child who spent years begging for love beneath layers of performance and survival. And paradoxically, the moment those hidden fragments are finally seen without shame, they begin losing their destructive power. Because what remains unconscious controls you. What becomes conscious can finally transform. This is the real meaning of shadow integration. Not becoming perfect, not becoming emotionless, but becoming whole. And when wholeness begins emerging inside you, the projection outside you starts changing naturally. Some people suddenly disappear from your life without conflict because the unconscious contract holding the dynamic together dissolves. Other relationships become healthier because you no longer unconsciously invite the same emotional pattern. The nervous system stops broadcasting desperation, fear, abandonment, or hidden shame in the same way. And reality responds differently. Not magically, not instantly, but coherently. Because when the internal film changes, the external projection cannot remain exactly the same. And when the internal film finally begins changing, reality itself starts responding in ways that feel almost impossible to explain logically. Some people disappear from your life without conflict, almost as if an invisible contract quietly dissolved between you. Certain relationships suddenly lose their emotional intensity. Old patterns no longer hook into your nervous system the same way. Situations that once triggered panic, obsession, jealousy, or desperation now pass through you with surprising calm. It is not because you became cold or emotionless. It is because the unconscious frequency that once fed those experiences is no longer broadcasting in the same way. And this is where something extraordinary begins happening. The world outside starts rearranging itself around a different internal state. Not magically like fantasy, more like a mirror reorganizing around a new reflection. But to truly understand this transformation, you must go even deeper, far beyond psychology, far beyond healing language, into the direct experience of consciousness itself. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine something strange. Imagine the entire three-dimensional world around you beginning to dissolve. The walls disappear first, then the sounds, the buildings, the people, the streets, the phone in your hand. Everything slowly gets swallowed into a vast black silence. And suddenly, you find yourself standing alone inside an endless room made entirely of mirrors. Billions of mirrors stretching infinitely in every direction. At first, you think you are looking at your own reflection. But as your eyes adjust, terror begins crawling through your chest. Because the mirrors are not showing your face. Each mirror contains someone from your life. Your mother, your father, your ex-lover, your boss, your child, your friend, the person who betrayed you, the person you still secretly hate, the person you still blame for your suffering. Every face staring back at you from every direction at once. And the emotional weight becomes unbearable. Rage rises. Grief rises. Fear rises. The body wants to run. The ego wants revenge. You feel the ancient human instinct to destroy every face that ever hurt you. So you step toward one of the mirrors and raise your fist. But the moment your hand touches the glass, something impossible happens. A crack appears, then another, then another. And within seconds, billions of cracks spread across the entire infinite room like lightning moving through reality itself. The mirrors begin shattering everywhere at once, exploding outward into endless fragments. But strangely, there is no blood, no pain, no violence. The glass does not cut you. Instead, the broken mirrors dissolve into particles of light, golden light, red light, violet light, waves of luminous energy spiraling through the darkness like galaxies being born. And then those lights begin moving toward you, faster and faster, until every shattered fragment of every person, every memory, every wound, every betrayal rushes directly into your chest, into your heart, into your nervous system, into the center of your consciousness. And suddenly the noise stops. The accusations stop. The blame stops. The emotional warfare stops. There is only silence. Vast, endless silence. And within that silence comes a realization so profound it changes the structure of your identity forever. There was never truly another person separate from you in the way you believed. Every face was part of the same deeper field expressing itself through different forms. The people who abandoned you. The people who betrayed you. The people who triggered your deepest wounds. They were not random punishments sent by the universe. They were mirrors carrying fragmented aspects of your own consciousness back toward you. The emotionally unavailable partner forced you to face the places where you abandoned yourself. The manipulative person revealed the fear and self-betrayal already living inside your inner world. The arrogant person activated the strength and self-expression you buried long ago. Every painful encounter was part of a deeper process trying to return you to wholeness. And this is why hatred eventually collapses when awareness becomes deep enough. Because you cannot endlessly hate another reflection without eventually realizing you are still fighting yourself through different masks. This does not excuse abuse. It does not deny pain. The tears were real. The trauma was real. The heartbreak was real. But beneath the surface of the human drama, something deeper was unfolding the entire time. Consciousness was trying to wake itself up through the mirrors of relationship. Suddenly, forgiveness is no longer something forced through morality or spiritual performance. It becomes a natural side effect of understanding. Because the moment you realize the world was reflecting unconscious fragments back to you all along, the entire emotional battlefield begins dissolving. The need for revenge weakens. The obsession weakens. The attachment weakens. The projection loses force. And for the first time in a very long time, all the energy you scattered across countless people and painful memories starts returning home to you. Not to the ego, not to the victim identity, but to the deeper center beneath all the masks. And maybe this is the real meaning of healing. Not becoming perfect, not becoming untouchable, but gathering all the fragmented pieces of yourself that were hidden inside other people and finally bringing them home. And when you finally return from that inner journey, something subtle but irreversible has changed inside you. The world outside may still look exactly the same. The traffic still moves. People still argue. Phones still glow in dark rooms at midnight. Workplaces still carry tension. Relationships still rise and fall. Human beings still wound each other in countless unconscious ways. But your eyes no longer look at reality from the same place. Because once you truly understand the mirror, you can never completely return to the old illusion again. Someone may still speak to you with anger, but now part of you sees beyond the surface reaction. You no longer immediately collapse into the old instinct of blame, defense, or emotional warfare. Somewhere deeper inside, another awareness has awakened. You begin recognizing that behind every act of cruelty often lives an unconscious wound desperately trying to protect itself. Behind arrogance often lives hidden insecurity. Behind manipulation often lives fear. Behind emotional absence often lives a person disconnected from their own pain. And strangely, this realization does not make you weaker. It makes you freer. Because when you stop taking every projection personally, the nervous system begins relaxing in ways it never could before. You stop carrying the impossible burden of controlling every external reflection around you. And for the first time, your energy begins returning to the only place where real transformation can happen, your own consciousness. This does not mean you tolerate abuse. It does not mean you stay inside harmful situations pretending to be spiritually evolved. Boundaries still matter. Discernment still matters. Sometimes walking away is necessary. Sometimes silence is necessary. Sometimes distance is an act of self-respect. But now those actions emerge from awareness instead of unconscious emotional reactivity. You are no longer running away from mirrors blindly. You are choosing consciously what aligns with your inner state and what no longer belongs inside your reality. And perhaps this is where true maturity begins. Not when life becomes painless, but when pain stops automatically controlling your identity. Because most human beings unconsciously build their entire sense of self around wounds, betrayals, heartbreaks, and emotional memories. I am the abandoned one. I am the betrayed one. I am the rejected one. The ego turns suffering into identity. But the moment you begin seeing those experiences as mirrors instead of permanent definitions, identity itself starts loosening. You realize you are not only the wounded character inside the story, you are also the awareness watching the story unfold. And this changes everything. Because awareness can observe pain without becoming trapped inside it forever. The observer can witness emotional storms without drowning in them completely. And slowly, a new relationship with reality begins forming. Instead of obsessing over controlling people, you become more interested in understanding the frequencies operating inside yourself. Instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" you begin asking, "What is this experience revealing inside me?" The external world transforms from a battlefield into a feedback system. Every trigger becomes information. Every relationship becomes a teacher. Every emotional reaction becomes a doorway into deeper consciousness. And eventually, something almost mystical starts happening. The more integrated you become internally, the less hostile the world appears externally. Not because reality becomes perfect, but because your perception is no longer filtering everything through unresolved pain. Situations that once felt like attacks now feel like signals. People who once consumed your mind lose their emotional grip. You stop seeing yourself as a victim trapped inside random suffering and begin recognizing yourself as an active participant in the field of consciousness shaping your experience. And maybe this is the hidden meaning behind so many ancient spiritual teachings across human history. As within, so without. The outer world reflects the inner condition. Not mechanically, not simplistically, but symbolically. Emotionally, energetically, psychologically. The reality around you continuously mirrors the relationship you hold with yourself beneath conscious awareness. Which means the deepest revolution is never only external. It is internal coherence. It is the moment your inner world stops warring against itself. Because when the fragmented pieces inside you begin reconnecting, the need for external enemies slowly dissolves. The obsession with blame weakens. The addiction to emotional drama weakens. The unconscious hunger for conflict weakens. And in the silence left behind, something else finally emerges. Presence. A quiet, grounded presence that no longer depends entirely on external validation to feel whole. And maybe that is what healing was always trying to lead you toward from the very beginning. Not perfection, not superiority, not becoming untouchable, but becoming integrated enough that reality no longer needs to scream through suffering just to get your attention. So the next time someone triggers pain inside you, pause before immediately labeling them as the enemy. Breathe. Observe. Ask yourself what part of your inner world is being illuminated through this interaction. Because perhaps the universe has never truly been punishing you. Perhaps it has been trying, again and again, to return you back to yourself through every mirror you ever met. And maybe the most beautiful realization of all is this. The moment you stop fighting reality, reality finally stops needing to fight you back. So maybe the people who hurt you were never only obstacles in your path. Maybe they were mirrors revealing the hidden fractures, fears, and forgotten parts of yourself that were waiting to be seen, healed, and brought back into wholeness. The moment you stop fighting every reflection outside you and begin turning inward with awareness, the entire relationship between you and reality starts changing. Because reality is not only something happening to you, it is also responding to the state of consciousness you carry within you. And perhaps true freedom begins the moment you realize you no longer need to destroy the mirror in order to find peace. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who may need this message, and subscribe to the channel for more deep explorations into consciousness, reality, the observer effect, shadow work, and spiritual awakening. And before you leave, comment below, "I stopped fighting the mirror." Sometimes one sentence is enough to begin changing the entire direction of your inner world.